Hello.
Happy day.
If you say so. But it is out on an island, episode 21, so that's exciting.
Yeah, I'm Al,
I'm Diz.
and we are on two different pieces of stolen land today still, because Diz is traveling. Our formal land acknowledgement can be found on our website, out on an island podcast.com.
And if you haven't heard the island that, well, one of us is on right now, just to be mysterious about it, is the big island of Hawaii. Just
Yeah.
live on Hawaii.
Yeah, we do. We live the big island of Hawaii, which was a part of the Hawaiian Kingdom, is still a part of the Hawaiian Kingdom.
Yeah, I don't know. There's a whole lot of movement happening with that whole. I mean, there's a lot of quakes in the sovereignty movement right now, just because they changed the stewardship laws for Mauna Kea. I
Oh,
didn't really.
yeah.
Yeah, I think did they turn it over from the university or to the university?
From the university. It's this really, it's very interesting that you brought this up because I just read about them like a couple weeks ago. So it's this really like grassroots Hawaii focused group, and they recently got we'll put their name and a link to the article in our show notes, but they got awarded doing all of like the tourist stuff. So like from the Board of Tourism to them, and now they get the stewardship of Mauna Kea, and they're doing like political candidates, and so it's kind of crazy. I don't remember their name right now.
Wild. Yeah, I with everything else that's been going on in the world, I have barely been paying attention to like what's going on locally, just because I'm way less concerned that that's going to result in like my imminent death due to like nuclear war or something. So, but like, yeah, what's going on? How are you doing this week? What's going on?
I'm doing, oh God, okay, I'm doing. This week, there's been a lot of emotional labor. So, my mister and I graduated from therapy, which is great that our therapist feels like we've moved beyond what she can do. And like she's trying to go into different things too. But just it's really like a lot. We've been seeing her for 7 years. We started as couples, and like we actually ended our entire therapy journey with her yesterday with our last couple session, and it was just crazy to see like how far we've grown together as a couple. Like, I don't know, we did sand tray, and like, so sand tray is like where you pick these figures that represent like different things on a topic or a theme, and like then you explain them. And like as we do sand tray, like she was taking copious notes, and then like at in our last session she like read all of our sand tray stuff, and we like looked at the pictures, and like it of like our sand trays, and like it feels really weird like to do that and be like, oh, that's where we were, that's what we were dealing with. And like it's crazy to like see how far we've grown, I guess.
Yeah,
But it
sure.
didn't feel super celebratory.
Yeah, I mean, I guess more than anything, it's just like you guys started with a couples therapy session and ended with them. It feels very full circle.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that a lot of people get like full circle, endings for therapy. I think people just generally stop going or like, move away. I don't know if I've ever even heard of anyone graduating from therapy before, but then again, I'm not like big in the therapy game either, so.
Yeah, we did individual therapy, couples therapy, and group therapy. And so people graduated a lot from group therapy, just like when the group, when their needs, for whatever they were in group therapy for, when they were met, they like moved on. Or like if there were conflicts they didn't feel like dealing with, like they also graduated. And so we're really familiar with the concept of graduating from therapy, but I have never done it myself.
Which is funny because you've graduated from so many things.
I know. Never thought that would happen. How was your week? You're just having like a cool big adventure. I'm obviously feeling like the spotlight is on me and I don't want to deal with it. So I'm deflecting.
Yeah, I mean, that's really silly to say that I'm having a big, cool adventure. I'm not really having a big, cool adventure. I'm in Denver, Colorado, which is sick. Nice city. I haven't really gotten out much because both my friend that I'm staying with and I are digital nomad kind of workers, so like, we're still working a lot during the day. It's been all right though. Just like got back on the horse doing some climbing because Colorado, and just realizing that I'm awfully terribly out of shape, and um, my triceps feel like jelly, and I climbed for like I don't know, maybe like an hour and a half last night, like maybe, and then like just doing bouldering routes, and then went to a core fitness class today, and like I'm already dead. So that's not saying like a lot of great things about like my physical prowess right now.
I think those are two very intense, different types of workouts that you did, and of course your body is going to be exhausted. You don't move like that in Hawaii.
No, you definitely don't. Also, like one thing that I keep not factoring in is that the elevation that like Colorado is at is crazy high.
Oh, right, it's the Mile High Place,
Or
right?
not Colorado particularly, I guess Denver, but yeah, they call it like the Mile High City or whatever.
Yeah,
Um,
that's got to
yeah,
affect your breathing and stuff.
yeah, it's pretty high up. It's 5,279 feet in elevation.
That means nothing to me.
Well, if you think about like Mauna Kea, like base camp, like the visitor center is at 9,000. So
Yeah, I was thinking it's almost halfway to something. And then, like, because Hawaii, the Big Island, goes from sea level all the way up to 13,000 feet. So people use it for, like, for people who don't know, listeners who don't know, people come here and they do all kinds of really intense, rigorous trainings and because of the elevation changes.
it's literally a foot underneath like an actual mile up. So
Oh, wow.
yeah, it's literally the Mile High City, which is like yeah, you don't really notice it. It's not like it feels like hard to breathe or anything, but I guess you probably feel it a little bit more when you're being super active.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, a lot of super active people out here though, because a lot of beautiful wilderness around
So
these
did
parts.
Did you do indoor hiking or indoor climbing or outdoor climbing?
Oh, indoor for sure. Yeah. I mean, not good enough of a climber to not have a big cushy pad underneath me.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense. Were you all
Yeah.
harnessed in and everything?
Mm,
I went climbing like that one time and it was just really a fun experience, like to see like, oh, what can my body do? And it could do some pretty cool things.
yeah, I like it a lot because it's like figuring out puzzles with your body. And it definitely doesn't allow you to think about much else while you're doing it. But no, what we were doing last night wasn't top roping, which is what you're talking about. And that's like when you're like using harnesses and like, you're probably climbing like anywhere from like 40 to like, 70 feet. Bouldering is like, I think you rarely get over like 15 feet off the ground, but like it's no harnesses. It's all just just free climbing kind of routes.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
crazy.
It's a lot of hanging. You do a lot of hanging stuff. Yeah, I mean it's really hard, and I really admire people who like are crazy good at it because it is intense. It's a really intense workout.
I have a friend from high school who does climbing like out in the world like all the time. And for her birthday, I can't remember if it was 2020 or 2021, they rode their bikes from their property in California all the way to Las Vegas and they camped along the way and they like climbed and they had to like even canoe or kayak like so they had to bring all this like inflatable gear and stuff. Like she is just like outdoor. If you're looking for like someone to inspire you, like it's definitely her.
Yeah, that's wild. Every time like you see like those big climbing movies, they get popular. for a minute, like Free Solo got really popular, you know,
Mm.
or like anything like Jimmy Chin makes, like those movies always just make me think like, fuck, I'm not I'm not doing enough with my life. Like I'm not like trying hard enough, you know what I mean? Like those people are like trying to live so much and I'm just like my triceps hurt. So
We all have
just,
different goals, it's fine.
yeah, I mean, you know, that's a really nice way to say it, but I think it's just like, you know, some people are just better at being people than other people. It's fine. I accept it. Speaking of terrible or good people, mostly terrible, you got anything in the news you want to talk about?
I do. So I have two things. One is an academic thing. So I woke up to a series of text messages this morning that was like, did you check out the article? And I was like, what is the article? And like,
How ominous, just like
I,
the article.
the article, and it was in quotes, or it was like that article in quotes. And I was like, I have no idea what you're talking about right now, literally. What are you talking about? And so I guess in academic Twitter, which is a thing that I don't really participate in it. I should, I don't. This article is going around and people have so many different thoughts on it. And basically, this dude was doing research on a whole bunch of people, like you do, because
Mm-hmm.
studies are about people. And it was about like I'm not sure if his study was about masturbation or if it was just about sex in general.
Okay.
Yeah, this is where we're going today. And
Oh.
this dude was like, look, there's only so much I could understand by what they were talking about with their experiences masturbating to these male comics called Shota comics without
Okay.
actually doing it myself. So I took it upon myself to explore the experience of sexual pleasure while reading Shota and then write about it. Write about it. And like, so academic Twitter, I guess, is just up in arms. I mean, like, I, I'm like, how can you, like, one person is not what it takes to make a participant observation study, and he's calling he's calling it like experimental methods, and it's like, oh, what are
It
you
sounds a
doing?
lot like this guy just like is kind of a troll and also like he maybe just wants attention because like I'm trying to figure out like what that is. I can't really actually find a straight answer. I'm like looking up these comics right now.
Oh, Shota comics? Yeah, I don't
Yeah,
know. They're just these comics and they star like they don't star. I don't know. They feature young boy characters.
it's
And
fucked up, man.
yeah, it's all kind of weird. And so like he found this subculture and I think it's cool like if he just kept it to like exploring, whatever he wanted to set out to explore in this community of people, you know, who are masturbating to young boy characters in comics, like, cool, talk about that. But
Mm,
to go on, I mean, so, there's lots of studies on like grooming, internet grooming for young kids for pedophilia and stuff, because you have to understand what's going on in order to help inform policy changes and stuff. So, you
sure.
know, so if he wanted to just keep it at that, that's fine. But he was like, in his literal abstract, is like, I will recount how I set up this experimental method of masturbating to Shota comics and how this observation of my own desire not only gave me a more embodied understanding of the topic, but also made me think about loneliness. And it's like, this is, it feels like you just wanted to write a journal entry, and
Right.
like the fact that someone published this is crazy. I think,
Yeah,
yeah, that's why Twitter's kind of going crazy. Like, this is not a study.
yeah. This guy sounds like a fucking troll, dude, is what he sounds like. He also sounds like maybe he derives sexual pleasure from being like a troll, you know what I mean? Like, I mean, because this is obviously like not chill, bro. You know what I mean? Like, I understand that academia is like an open door to discuss topics from like every level. And this article that I'm reading about it here specifically mentions that like there's a lot of like studies and like academia outside of like STEM that we don't really talk about, but like this isn't this. Why is this like useful? You know what I mean? Like, why was that useful for him to do? Like, I mean, it seemed very like, I mean, self-indulgent. Masturbation, self-indulgent. Like, and yeah, exactly. It's not like this was like a peer to like reviewed study or something where it's like we had lots of participants and then like lots of PhDs looked over this. It's just like this one dude jerking off to young boys, and that's fucked up.
Yeah. So a correction has been published. I think he said it's a note, which means that, yeah, it wouldn't have been peer reviewed, but the journal is a peer reviewed journal where it's published. And
This study is like a one-person study, so does that
it,
even make it a study or just like an experience? Like, what does academia say about that?
I think, if it didn't go through the IRB process, then it is not like a study. I think so. We often talk about, not you and me, but we in academia often talk about how many people you need to have in your study. And like one person is not a study, and doing an experiment on yourself is not highly respected at all. There's this dude who, I don't know, something called H. pylori, which is a stomach ulcer causing bacteria. And I actually teach about this so this dude went to this conference and was like, hey, look, I can prove to you that we can combat this bacteria and like prevent like stomach ulcers. And what he did was he did the study on himself, and he just got so trashed. Like it didn't matter what his results were, because you need to go through like a proper process in order to get like a, a published respectable study. So there are paradigms and there are rules, and he didn't do either of them. And this dude who wrote this Shota study, he didn't either. So whatever his findings are, like, this is so controversial and outside the norms of what we regard as respected research that, like, I don't even know who would be championing this. Like, again, I'm not on academic Twitter, and I'm sure some people are championing him, but like I imagine it's a very marginalized group, and those people I wouldn't trust in, like, for ethics.
Fuck, I don't know, dude. This, like, I'm reading this article, which is published on a site called lbc.co.uk. It was published yesterday. Today's the 12th. So, I don't know. It feels a lot like, I mean, the way that he went about it, like, nothing feels like a study. Like, it feels like he jerked off and then wrote his experiences down about jerking off, which just sounds like the dude has a jerk off journal. You know
Yeah,
what I mean? Like,
basically.
I wouldn't call that science. And like, I mean, what I'm not seeing in this article is like what he is using to justify this. Like, what is the nature of this study? Like, is it just to see what happens? Like, like I don't really see
Yeah.
like what his thesis is here. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So it starts off real confessional, and like I'm like, you don't write like that. Like, this is not if you're challenging like the conventions of academia to try to make a point, like, I'm not sure this is the way to go about it. But like,
Sure.
it is super confessional, and like, oh, masturbation is the method. Oh my gosh, I can't even with this. This
Yeah,
is garbage.
it sounds a lot like this guy fucking wrote this to get like a jolly out of just being an asshole or like being controversial. I mean, like, he had to have known that like this was going to be the result. It's like he had to have known.
Yeah, he had to have known. So his thesis is that masturbation helped him understand the material that people were engaging with and what they were getting out of it in a way that he didn't understand before actually masturbating to it. That's
Mm,
his thesis.
yeah, that doesn't
Um,
sound above board to me.
no. Yeah, it
All right,
sounds like
what's your
bullshit.
second piece of news? Because that's
My,
really upsetting and garbagey.
I know, I'm sorry.
No, no,
I'm so
don't be a
sorry.
star. The world works that way.
My second piece of news, it's about Waikiki. And so, I don't know if you know or how many people know, but like beaches erode. And Waikiki is literally built on a reef, right? And in order to try to save some of the sidebars, the sandbars, they keep building out these like break walls and stuff. It's something so we import our sand. First and
Mm-hmm.
foremost, the sand of Waikiki is not Hawaii sand. It is imported. With rising sea level and like eroding stuff, people are saying that like Waikiki, the hotels and stuff are going to need to figure out what to do because the future after 2055 is uncertain.
Mm-hmm.
Not only are there, lease extensions that are expiring because as we talked about previously, the land is stewarded. You can like lease the land and then buy a house, but in some areas you cannot buy the land. Like there's a land lease and, after 30 years you can propose to buy the land, but it's like paying another mortgage. So a lot of these leases are going to expire and then they don't know like what Waikiki is going to look like in the face of these environmental changes. And so people are talking about like moving big swaths of Waikiki and Kaka'ako, which is another district
Mm-hmm.
built on the water on Oahu. And like, they're looking at other places like on Oahu to like rebuild. And so it's just crazy. Yeah, they're talking about like these are considered special improvement districts and how they want to preserve them in some ways is to like build out more. Well, they're going to build a series of T-shaped structures to help stabilize the beaches. So it just means they're going to put more shit in the water or they're going to move these buildings and like it's just they're cluttering up like this beautiful land more with shit
Yeah.
basically.
Well, I mean, not to be, overtly pessimistic or anything, but the island of Oahu is just fucked. Like, it's just fucked. We allowed way too many developers to come in there and just like play God with like the ecosystems and just be like, whatever, put a hotel on it, put a condo on it. You know what I mean? And like now, for scale, for anybody listening, the island of Oahu, just the city of Honolulu, contains more people than the entirety of the population of the Big Island. Now, again, for scale, the island of Oahu and all of the other Hawaiian islands can fit within the Big Island, and there would still be room left over. So, like,
Yeah.
that is like what that island is dealing with. And for anybody traveling to or like Hawaii, like obviously you want to see Waikiki and like you want to fucking see all the stereotypical like blue Hawaii Elvis fucking, I don't know what people come to Oahu for, it sucks, but like you know what I mean, like it's not gonna be that. And I think like there's still a lot of magic about that island. Like North Shore is beautiful and the Pipe Master is really dope, but like I feel like what we're like ignoring and what like the state of Hawaii is asking for, at least the populace of like the state of Hawaii is asking for, when we ask people to like consider your environmental impact as like a tourist and like what you do, is because people are just ignoring that like these really really delicate ecosystems are now just going to shit. Like good example, Kelly Slater, you know,
Mm-hmm.
he has a North Shore home. If anybody doesn't know, Kelly Slater is like a 8 or 9-time world surfing champion. He has a beautiful house in the North Shore of Oahu. He got in trouble for installing something called a sand burrito,
What is
which
that?
it's basically like he went and he dug a trench in front of his house and he put together like they put in like I think it's like just kind of like a huge like sandbag thing to kind of like stop the sand from in front of his house from like going out with the tide. They're illegal as shit is what they are because they compromise like the structural integrity of the beach. But he just figured like and DLNR told him he could not do this.
Oh.
he did it. He just figured that he would just do it, and then he would deal with the consequences later because, like, what are they going to do? They're going to fine him, and he's rich, so he can pay for that.
Yeah.
And that's the mentality of most of the people who live on these coastlines is like, fuck it, I'm going to get mine and like fuck everything else, and I'm rich, so like I don't have any consequences, like that's pretty upsetting.
Yeah, that's very upsetting. That's crazy too, because like, isn't he from Hawaii? Like, isn't he like,
No, I think he's
oh,
from
okay.
California.
Not like
But I
it,
mean,
I
you
was gonna
know,
say not like it matters, but it does kind of matter.
I mean, what matters is like the sport that he fucking loves, Oh, he's from Florida, excuse me. The sport that he loves and like his entire livelihood was invented in the Hawaiian Islands. Like, you should have respect for that, if nothing else. You know what I mean? Like the
Yeah.
thing that like made you famous and made you rich and like all of these things. That's because of like Hawaiian culture and like the Hawaiian Islands. So like you should really. Anyway, back to what we were talking about. It just sucks. Like people, I think like more and more, like Hawaii needs to start like kind of standing up for itself, especially like Oahu and stuff, and saying like just no more, like no more development, like no more breaks for like people who stand above the law. Um, when it comes to like environmental protection.
Yeah.
Fucking no more hotels, dude. We have enough hotels. Like, there's enough.
And we have empty buildings. Like, in Ward, another area on Oahu, which I think like maybe like a decade ago, Oahu hit like 1 million people or something. Like it's
Mm-hmm.
insane.
I think just the city of Honolulu, not even the whole island of Oahu.
Yeah, it's crazy. And like, so they tore down on most of the islands, there is a law where you can't build a building that is taller than any eyeline view of a mountain. So like, if you propose a building, it has to still allow you to see the mountain from, you know, other places. So like, so then there winds up being like floor and height requirements and stuff that are capped. And Oahu doesn't have this. So they tore down this beautiful, like, it wasn't beautiful, but they tore down this like shopping area that a lot of local people congregated at. They had all kinds of local shops and like local activities and events and vendors, and like it was really cool. And they put up a high rise, like a fucking 30-story high rise that blocks the ocean, blocks the mountain, also created all this unnecessary shade and a wind tunnel. And it's like, it sits empty because the asking prices on these units started at like $1 million or something. So, like, I don't know. I don't understand. I agree with you, and I think a lot of people do agree with you that we want to continue to diversify away from tourism as our main like income generator. And it just, I don't know, the people in charge just don't seem to agree.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. We're just gonna keep, you know, we're just gonna keep running into like bigger and bigger environmental issues because it's just a really delicate ecosystem and we have not respected it at all.
Yeah.
And so
I
now,
actually, oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I was just gonna say, like now we're really gonna, I mean, planet in general, but like Hawaii's much smaller, so you're seeing the effects on a much more vivid scale.
Yeah, there's two things. First, this is an amazing segue because we're talking about local politics. And today we're going to be talking about pumpkin politics, which is awesome. And the second is that the organization that got awarded all of these big contracts and has been like stepping in is the Council for Native Hawaiian Advancement. So they are a growing player in like the political arena in the state of Hawaii.
Yeah, which for anybody who doesn't know about like political situations or like the political climate in Hawaii, Hawaii is like intensely liberal. Like we are we're a pretty fucking liberal state, which is a comforting notion because things like, you know, the abortion like ban and the overturn of like Roe versus Wade is not really ever going to be an issue in Hawaii. And, you know, I think like when Trump enacted like his immigrant ban, which basically just, you know, was like a Muslim ban, Hawaii was like the first person to like turn around and sue for that. Because, you know, everybody's a fucking immigrant in Hawaii. And so it's just like really, really very liberal. But there is, as we were like talking about in the beginning of the show, there is quite a lot of like discourse between what people feel like the government is and what they feel like it should be, regardless of how liberal. Like Hawaiian sovereignty is still pretty much shit all over. And that's like a huge topic in its own. That's like quite a conversation to have.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think we have any like, do we have any political punk bands in Hawaii? I mean, not for years, I don't think.
No, not for years. Nobody comes to mind. Sorry if you're out there and you're a political punk band in Hawaii.
Yeah. Hit us up. Let us know that you exist.
Yeah, we'd be happy to talk with you and share your story of your comeuppance and stuff. Yeah, like we were talking yesterday, Black Square made it to the Wikipedia page for political punk bands, and I thought that was very interesting. The owner now, or I don't know, one of the founding members owns a restaurant called Downbeat Diner, and I mean, I don't really know. I guess they're political. They made it to the page. So.
I mean, I don't know. Like a ska band anyway, so it's
that's
like,
what I think. Yeah,
I've never actually listened to them because they're not really like up my alley.
Yeah,
of like musical interest, but you know, that's good for them.
Yeah, their shows are fun, and like actually, when Strung Out, so I don't know if they work with BAMP, BAMP is a music promoter in Hawaii that brings in a lot of live music, and they have their own venue too called the Republic. When Strung Out played the Republic, Jason Cruz did an impromptu acoustic set at Downbeat Diner, and that was so cool. Like I didn't yet I didn't yet fly to Oahu when he was there, but I watched the live stream and like I was so very happy about that.
That's cool.
Yeah, because again, when bands play my favorite punk songs, but they are acoustically versions, of course I'm gonna like melt inside like a little bit, like, oh, this is so great. Because
cool.
You really get to hear the lyrics, like we talked about in another episode.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely some bands that I like that would not translate well to acoustic music. I think you definitely have to be more on like the poppy, like melodic side of punk rock to make that work. But I can tell you, like, you know, bands like Rancid and stuff make excellent acoustic music. They sound like country songs more than anything.
Yeah, War on Women did an acoustic album that I just really love. I think you can translate any genre, yeah. Any subgenre of punk into acoustic, and it works really well. I'd love to hear a Minor Threat acoustic set. I think that would be pretty amazing.
Yeah, except it wouldn't sound like Minor Threat. You know what I mean? Like it would just be like it would have to be like some kind of like melodic interpretation of Minor Threat, because Minor Threat was like the antithesis of melody.
Yeah, I think that's what's so cool about acoustic. Yeah, I don't know. Yes, I agree. And I think that it would be amazing. That interpretation would be amazing.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it wouldn't be a very honest adaptation, but it would definitely be an adaptation. But yeah, fucking, I guess Minor Threat's a good place to kind of jump into politics, I guess. I mean, yeah, I guess they were pretty political.
Yeah, one of their subgenres is anarcho-punk, so I really consider them more social or socio-political than like political outright.
Yeah, I wouldn't call them anarcho in any way, shape, or form. I mean, really, like, if anything, I know that they weren't particularly militant about, like, their straight edge beliefs, but, like, the scene that came out of them, if anything, was very rule laden. You know what I mean? Like the straight edge scene is so, I'm not saying every straight edge person is, but like the scene definitely has a reputation to be really fucking high strung, you know?
Yeah. So when we were kind of kicking around this idea, there were some things that came up, like, and I thought that it was a really cool way of like organizing it and talking about it. So you were talking about how some people are really committed to like the democratic process, while others are into like anarchy and, Nazi punk is something we're just not even going to talk about, but it is a genre. And then like, how politics can be like community based, like hatred for people as opposed to like working together. And so I was just wondering, like, where do you want to go with all this? I kind of liked the way that you had structured it when you were just, when we were just kicking stuff around. I guess who is committed, if you want to start with the committed to the democratic process or you want to start somewhere else?
Sure. I mean, yeah. So the democratic process is interesting, right? Because like when you like think about punk rock, like I think the first idea that people have about it on like a stereotypical level is that it's a complete like denial of systems altogether, like that anarchy kind of like chaos and destroy everything mentality really comes to the forefront. But I think that what people don't really understand is that just like punk rock can be adapted to so many other musical genres, it's also adapted to like a lot of political ideologies. And I don't always necessarily agree with it. Like the democratic process, I think is like a beautiful dream, just like communism can be a beautiful dream, or just like, you know, the idea of like an anarchic society that wouldn't just immediately collapse would be a beautiful dream. But like, there are quite a lot of musicians who do choose to play like within the American system when it comes to like, the fact that the American system is either Democratic or Republican, and I mean, they're basically the same guy, but whatever. One's better than the other, I suppose. You know what I mean? One's definitely like less intense about being stupid. Anyway, the point is
I don't know. Okay, go
I know
ahead.
it's hard to say that, but like also then like one side has like Marjorie Taylor Greene, right? And like the other doesn't. So it's like, oh, that's a pretty good argument. Like
Yeah, I mean, one is definitely for the advancement of social justice, for more, advancing social justice and social equality on paper.
yeah. So I know that like during the fucking years of like the Bush era, the W era. I don't know. Some people are definitely too young to remember that era, I guess, but that was like the first time in my life that people were super pissed about our stupid president. It was worse with Trump, but like this one was pretty there. It was pretty up there. That was like when Fat Mike got really involved with like the Democratic Party. He even went so far as to attend like the Democratic conferences, and he got really into like, like encouraging young people to vote and all of those things, which like, good, I guess. Like that's fine. I hate the guy, so
Yeah, he put together these two compilation albums called Rock Against Bush Volumes 1 and Volume 2. Volume
yeah.
1 I like way more than Volume 2. Volume 2 is more pop punky. And anyway, I think the proceeds for that went to mobilizing against the re-election campaign of George W. Bush.
Yeah, which was a failed effort. But, I mean, I think it's really interesting to watch like a punk rocker be involved in the democratic process. And I mean, that's not like this isn't like a standalone example. Famously, Jello Biafra ran for mayor of San Francisco on a Democrat. Well, he ran for the Green Party, but like, I feel like he. How do you explain Jello Biafra? He's definitely not fooled by like the democratic image of America, but I think that he would maybe like to, see it enacted if it could be. But I guess my point is not so much like the democratic like identity, but like watching like punk rockers like participate in the democratic process is really interesting, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because I think it's such a trope for like punk rockers to be just like so hopeless, or like, be like, I'm not gonna vote because it doesn't fucking matter. And it's like, well, all right, it's kind of apathetic. I don't know. Like,
Yeah, I mean, it totally does matter, as we've seen like time and time again. Like, if Democrats just got out and voted, like, things wouldn't have happened, you know? Like,
yeah, I mean, I think like that's not a, and this is something that I really want to stress to anybody listening who has like feels a certain way about voting. And it's like, the reason that we end up with people like Donald Trump is because voter turnout is so insanely low. And like, if you don't want to see stupid shit like that happen, then like be involved in the process. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, every abstention is basically a vote for what you don't want. Like, that's a good way to think about it. Like, if you choose to not participate, you're just saying whatever you don't want is acceptable.
yeah, exactly. And like, I mean, there in the show notes, you'll find a link to an article from laddersound.com that is an interview with Jello Biafra about when he ran for mayor of San Francisco, and you can find all of the information in his even like little snide campaign video that he made there. I think the crazy thing is that he did pretty well in that election, but
Well, he was popular, and sometimes popularity can carry you a long way. Like, I mean, being the lead singer of the Dead Kennedys isn't not a big deal, you know?
yeah, totally. I mean, it was 1979, so like, they didn't really have a whole lot of um, notoriety at that point. They were still like a pretty brand new band, but still, I mean, the man, if anything, the man is smart as shit. You know what I mean? Like, he definitely like has a good head on his shoulders, like the way that he views society and the way that he like views the government and stuff. So yeah, I guess punks participating in the democratic process, like it seems like an anomaly, but it's pretty common. The one that is really mind-blowing to me at this point is how many like punk rockers are preaching communism. And I don't have anything against it really, except for the fact that I just don't understand. Like, have you seen anything about this?
Well, I've seen more the conservatism than the communism, but like communism as an ideal to strive for in a country, right? With any, I mean, like, there's no way, like, it can't result in a dictatorship because someone has to be in charge making the decisions of how these goods are getting produced and allocated. There's no way around it. And that seems like the antithesis of punk as well. It's not actually communal. Like, I feel like people who, I don't know, maybe they do know what they're talking about and they do want communism, but I'm like, don't you mean socialism? Don't you mean, you know, community supported services, and like that we all have access to the same things and we don't have to pay extra for it? Like, because that's socialism, like that's not communism.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's what I also have a very hard time understanding like what the appeal of communism is in terms of like a punk rock ethos, because I mean, I think we talked about this a little bit, on past episodes, but like communism's almost always, I mean, I guess I could just say always, end in brutal dictatorships, because human beings just aren't made that way. Like, and I guess that sounds cynical or something for me to say, but I mean, if history has shown us anything, right? Like, and so I don't understand like how the ethos ties into each other. I did just find a whole Reddit thread that names a shit ton of communist punk bands. None that I've ever heard of, but I'll throw it in the show notes if anybody's interested. I mean, I really just can't. I understand like how the idea of like communist rebellion and like communist like rebel heroes like could seem pretty punk, but like the politics and like a communist structure seem not super punk, so I'm just confused.
Yeah, same. But I have seen that people have said, like that because punk a punk ideology, right, is free thought, thinking for yourself,
Hmm.
like that, like there is room for people to have this belief that communism as collectivism is punk, and that because punk isn't inherently like it has no inherent political leanings, that like people can be whatever they want to be and be punk, or believe
Sure.
whatever they want to believe and be punk, and that includes this communist ideal, communism, promotion of communism. So,
I guess I just have a really hard time understanding like how you justify communism as uh like favored political structure when you're coming off of so many historical blunders like fucking Lenin, like you know what I mean, like when you're coming off of like even things like Che Guevara, right? Like I understand that it's really big for like people to like slap Che's face on things like he was a hero, and like sure, like he was a revolutionary, I'll give him that, but like he was also a murderer, you know what I mean? So like you can't just pick and choose like the things that you like. Like there was a lot of brutal death like as a result of all of these things, and so it just kind of seems like when I say like that communism seems like an antithesis of like punk ethos, I don't mean that it seems like there's one punk ethos that it's rebelling against. It just seems like it's kind of more favoring just being a generally shitty person to like spell out your own agenda. Does that make sense?
it does. It
It
makes sense.
Yeah,
And
it feels a
again,
lot
like,
less like free thought.
yeah. And again, neither of us know about this. We've never seen a successful communist political system in action,
That's true,
like,
yeah.
so we're very happy to be educated by someone who does know more about this or is in the scene for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I have a couple of friends even who are very big into this. I've never bothered to talk to them about it, honestly. Um, just because it seems daunting. But if you have a, if you have an opinion about this that you'd like to express, we'd love to hear it. I would really, really love to hear what the whole like viewpoint of communism and like punk rock, like how they like fit together is, because like I said, I'm just baffled by it. I just don't really understand it.
Yeah, same. Again, I feel like they have overshot.
Yeah.
So, shooting for communism or egalitarianism and kind of miss it. It's fine. It's fine. So I get like anarcho-punk is like a big genre in itself. I mean like anarcho-punk. Anarchy and punk do weirdly go hand in hand, but it's something I don't understand because in practice, I think we talked about this on a previous episode. Like in
Hmm.
practice, anarchy is a system, like it's not systemless, so the music doesn't make sense to me, like the message in the music doesn't make sense to me. But what do you think is so attractive about like anarcho punk, and like is there, like, not is there an agenda, but are there any kind of like leaders in there that could help bring about change in a political system, like how you were saying watching punks get involved in the political processes? Awesome. Are there any that you like can think of? And I'm only asking you because like you like a lot of anarcho punk bands.
Yeah. For sure. I mean, I think the closest that you're ever going to get to like anarcho like perception, and I think the way that like people view it, especially from like a particular like anarcho like punk scene or like mentality, is going to be like something where like community is very highly valued and money is less valued, and people grow their own food and people make their own clothes and people are not reliant on the government to, you know, lead them. And so this is like the best way that I can put this. I think the way that people really, really think about like anarcho punk is very surface in terms of like what the definition is. And I'm going to use a literal example from Urban Dictionary because this is like, it's exactly what it feels like. Like the definition of anarcho punk on Urban Dictionary is a person who hates the government and tends to be violent and also may have several felonies, which is like, okay.
I know you're joking, but you're not.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, like, then there's like also things that say like this can be fleshed out in so many ways, and there's different levels of aggression towards the state and focuses and like apoliticism and, you know, things like that. But like generally, I think when people think about anarcho as like a concept, what they are imagining is a structure. It's just a loosely governed structure. You know what I mean? Because like you're gonna have a government if you have like a community, if you have like a society, because like people are gonna have to delegate work, or like, you know what I mean? Like someone's gonna have to be responsible for like medical treatment. You know what I mean? Someone's gonna have to be responsible for like enforcing some kind of law that keeps like people, you know, in some kind of order, even if it's like just a loose agreement that everybody has. Like, you know, I mean, but no matter what, like it just doesn't, the actual like word anarchy doesn't actually, I don't think it's actually conducive to what anarcho is. And I think that like Leo Tolstoy got really famous, War and Peace, you know, everyone knows who Leo Tolstoy is. So Leo Tolstoy actually was really famous in Russian literature for coining the terminology anarcho-Christianity. He wrote a book called The Kingdom of Heaven is Within You, and it's an excellent book. I'm not a Christian, but like I'll give it to the guy. Like it's very much about like finding like your own purpose in having a religion as opposed to like accepting the churches, you know?
Yeah, that's an adaptation of panentheism, which means that the god or goddess, the spirit of whatever the spark you believe in, is in everything. And pantheism, yeah, so that's panentheism. Pantheism is that the spark of the whatever is in you. So it's it's not a bastardization. It's an adaptation of a very old idea to apply to Christians.
Yeah, sure. Which is like, sure, whatever. The man didn't want to accept the church as like the authority on like how he like worshiped God or whatever. Right on. I think that's exactly how people like to envision anarcho, right? Like anarcho punk is like, it's still a thing. Like society is still a thing, but like they just don't want to have to accept the government as like a figurehead of like who gets to tell them how,
what to do.
Yeah, exactly, how that works, or like, yeah. So I mean that in itself is not anarchy. And you know, I would love to talk to somebody who considers himself an anarchist who is like living within this society to better like understand how they're conceptualizing that, because
Yeah.
like communism, it's just another thing that like by its very definition and nature I don't really understand.
Yeah, and we've put out that request a couple times on our
Mm-hmm.
show so far. Um, so it's definitely an area of interest for
Yeah.
sure. Um, and yeah, I was so the way that you were talking about what actually is like the kernel of like or the core, right, of the belief system made me feel like more like socio-political, and there's like it's socio-political punk. It's not political punk. And not like that's a bad thing. I mean, like I look at them as two separate genres, but like whether you're talking about coming together as community or like standing up for the rights of others, like that's socio-political. And like that, I mean, to me it's socio-political, and like that to me is where there's like a huge explosion like of music. um I can't really identify anybody that is it. So we had that whole episode that we talked about women in punk, and like
Mm-hmm.
I think, have we talked about like feminism in punk yet? Like what feminine, like we talked about feminism. That might be a good idea for a show. Like we can look into different types of feminism. I mean, we talked about it when we talked about feminism in punk on the Women in Punk episode, and we talked about, you know, the fight LGBTQIA and trans specifically bands and bands that advocate trans rights. I haven't seen anybody of note though get involved in the political process. There is a lot of like, this is art to create change. This is art to validate you. This is constructed with a very specific political agenda in mind, whether it's the
Mm-hmm.
promotion of women or the promotion of anti-capitalism, anti-consumerism, whatever. But all that to me is like socio-political.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that like sociopolitical is kind of where people feel like they have any agency, right?
Mhm.
Because like to take on like something as vast as like the government, which would be like a truly political kind of like statement, or like, you know, to make something like that, like people, it's not that accessible. You know what I mean? Like it's not, I think like it's people write socio-political punk music because for the same reason that people fucking write love songs. It's access, you know, it's accessible. Like everybody can relate to that. And like also I think that like as the world evolves, like that kind of idea about like we're gonna rise above and like tear down this like government and blah blah blah, like we discussed on like past episodes, kind of is not really the mentality anymore. I think people are a lot more savvy to how things work now. And so like I agree, I haven't seen anybody of note get involved with the political process from like the punk rock world, but like regardless, like I do see a lot more people stepping up to do things like nonprofits, you know what I
Mhm.
mean? Or like
Mhm.
form collectives or like, and so I think like, but like I said, those things are, you know, they're obtainable. They're obtainable goals to make change. And also like, you know, you can argue the like, um, what is the adage? Think or act globally.
Oh,
Think
think
globally.
globally, act locally.
Yeah, think globally, act locally. Like, and so like, you know, and I think it's because it's just more realistic. Like there's a lot of things that you have to do to get into the political game in the United States, and like not enough maybe, but like still you have to
It's
go to like a certain school, like, or schools like Ivy
You
League
have to
shit.
continually raise money and like compete. And these are things that I'm obviously as a punk rocker like not down for. Like I don't want to raise money and I don't want to compete with you. Like if the
Yeah,
barriers to entry were different and everybody who, you know, everybody who wanted to had a fair shot without having to continually campaign and raise money and like have it be a popularity contest, like yeah, politics would be a lot more accessible to people, like to people. I would probably be more inclined to be involved in politics if that were the case, but like
sure.
it's not, and that to me is just not a life I want to live at all.
Yeah, absolutely. Also, you know, I think the difference between like socio-political and like political punk rock is really the fact that like we don't really make it that easy to understand the political systems of like this country. You know what I mean? So like
No,
it's not really easy for like the common person to just step up and have opinions about it, because there's a lot to understand. There's a lot of different like there's a lot of different factors that go into like building a capitalist society, and like they're not all bad, and they're mostly bad. You know what I mean? But like we discussed, before, like systems aren't made of bricks, they're made of people, right? So like when you value, or like, no, I guess not value, but like when you consider like a system, you don't really consider the fact that like the people involved in that system who are like anti what you're working towards changing or whatever are oftentimes like your family, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So like then it gets really complicated to like make waves in that direction as well. I think like everybody's very comfortable with expressing their opinions in like a socio-political way, because like those things can be swept under the rug at a Thanksgiving dinner, but like making like big political statements really comes down to like, how do you do that in this day and age?
Well, if you're the GOP, you say one thing and then you vote against gay marriage and then you attend your gay son's wedding.
Yeah.
So,
so like it doesn't mean anything at all. Like your political values don't actually mean anything at all. They're just a job, right?
yeah.
They're just something you get paid for, which is capitalism. So
Yeah.
like, yeah, I also think that to this effect, a lot of the reason that what we're seeing are kind of like small acts of rebellion through socio-political ideologies is because there's a lot of fucking learned hopelessness in the world, like especially in punk rock culture, because it at its very roots, it started with just saying we're all fucked.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's a lot easier to not want to participate in a political system because you are defeated by it immediately. And like, honestly, that's how they prefer it though.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
that in itself sucks, like,
Yeah, 100%. I think that, because we're here talking about people who do socio-political change in the form of like nonprofits, this might be a good time to talk about our shout outs for this week.
yeah, for sure. You got a pretty good one, it looks like, lined up here. You want to go ahead and talk about that?
Sure, yeah. Put down the punk rock food drive, which they do different events every year. One of them is the annual Thanksgiving food drive, and they raised in 2021 over 26,000 meals. But what they do in general is they put on a concert event that collects food and funds to benefit local food banks in their area. And their goal is to see no one like go hungry anymore. I think that's great.
Yeah, that's super great.
Yeah, what about you? Who is yours?
I don't really have any nonprofits lined up because I have been fucking off from my life out here in Denver.
Oh, fun.
Yeah, but I do have a couple band shout outs, and the only reason that they are, they're good bands, sure, but like I'm actually going to a show to see them tonight, which is why they're like poignant. So I'm gonna
Oh,
shout out
yay.
Red Fang. Their album Murder the Mountains is fucking excellent. I guess they just released a new album. I have my fingers crossed because I didn't love the last new thing that I heard from them, but like it's a doom metal show. It's gonna be doomy as fuck. It's gonna be very ambient and very loud. I'm excited for it. But yeah, if you're into that style of music, Red Fang, Murder the Mountains.
Cool. Yeah, and if you get a specific song that you want, we'll throw it in the playlist just to kind of mix it up. My band shout out is The Living End. They've been together since 1992. They are out of Melbourne, Australia, and like their self-titled album, like it was so cool when I heard it. And so Prisoner of Society is the song that I recommend off that album. It's big, it's anthemy. It talks about how like, oh yeah, like you see me as a dick and everything, but like I'm a product of the society that I live in. Like I didn't become this way by myself.
Sure, sure.
Yeah.
You know what we didn't do at the top of the show here is we talked about a bunch of bummer news and we didn't talk about any good news. So let's squeeze some good news in here real quick
I
before
thought
we
we
sign
did.
off.
Oh no.
We didn't, yeah. It's okay. It's nice to end this on a happy note, you know?
Yay, happy note.
That's new and different for us. Normally we're just like, fuck, and then I have to go on with the rest of my day. Cool. So this week we are pulling from the environmental section of the Good News Hub. This article was written by Abraham Fletcher and it was released July 1st, 2022. And it states that the first CO2 battery storage facility opens in Italy, which is dope because this clean energy startup, Energy Dome, has developed a large battery which uses CO2 instead of lithium to create and store electricity. Not only does this provide a solution for putting captured emissions to good use, but the batteries are also cheaper to produce than standard batteries.
That is
So,
amazing.
yeah, totally. And they're actually going to start being used in Italy and in a few other places by 2023. So, like, that's sick. That's very, very soon.
That is really awesome. And I'm hoping that it's more cost effective and affordable than the car that we shared
Yeah.
that no one can buy.
That no one can buy. I think like the exciting thing about that though is now that like it's been introduced to the industry, like it's only going to become more commonplace, you know? It's like at the point where fucking like iPhones came out, they were like a big fucking deal and they were expensive and they were like these things, you know, and like now like just fucking walk around with like all kinds of different versions of like fancy smartphones in your pocket. So like, you know, within our lifetime, I'm sure that we'll start to see like way more of those kinds of uh like solar technology and stuff implemented, especially in the automobile industry. So, because you know, fossil fuels are depleting and we're all gonna die or something.
Yeah, and just a tangent off that happy thought, George Jetson was fictionally born on July 31st, 2022. So where the fuck are our flying cars that are
um,
emissions free, you know?
yeah, no, totally. Or like, you know, just like, I mean, I guess one good thing about the parallels between the current future and the Jetsons is we're not just living in like this super antiquated, like weird uh family structure like the Jetsons were with like the wife. Like I think like his wife literally just steals his wallet to go shopping while he goes to work in the introduction like theme song of that cartoon. So that's already pretty disappointing. You know?
Yeah, and there's only like four families we follow and they're all white. They definitely are corpos in the cyberpunk world. If they were situated in cyberpunk, they would be corpos. So yeah, that's fun and happy. If you want to connect with us on anything we've talked about, you can email us at outonAnislandpodcast@gmail.com. Or DM us on Instagram.
Yeah, totally. I mean, we love the discussions. Have the discussions. Even if you're telling us we're stupid and we're wrong, we're in. Bring it
Yeah,
on.
we like growing in a teachable moment and stuff. Yeah. All right. Bye.
Bye.
Oh, no.